Hello, I'm Michel Hernould. I'm from the University of Bordeaux. I'm very pleased to do this presentation, and I would like to thank the organizer to invite me. I would like also to apologize to all the participants because the conference was planned to be organized in Bordeaux this year, but due to the evolution of the sanitary situation in France, it was not possible to do it. So I hope to see you in the next future in Bordeaux for maybe a next conference. Before starting the first subject of my presentation, I would like to introduce France and the New Aquitaine region, and then Bordeaux. So France is 500,000 of square kilometers. It's with approximately 70 million of inhabitants. And New Aquitaine is the largest region in France with 84,000 of square kilometers and 6 million of inhabitants. So New Aquitaine is a bit more than 15% of the French territory, but it's less than 10% in terms of inhabitants. At last, New Aquitaine is the largest region in France, but it's also the largest agricultural region in Europe. And Bordeaux is the capital of New Aquitaine. When you talk about Bordeaux anywhere in the world, immediately the name Bordeaux is associated to the wine. But if you look at the diversity of the vineyards in the French territory, you can see a large distribution of the different vineyards. At the total, the French vineyards represent 7.5 thousand square kilometers, so 11% of the world vineyards. And it corresponds to a turnover of 30 billion euro for wine and liquors. It's at the third place of the incomes of France. If you look at the Bordeaux vineyard, it's only 1.15 thousand square kilometers. And if you look at the turnover, the corresponding turnover, it's around 3 billion euro. So 1/5 of the French vineyard is able to produce 1/4 of the turnover, which means a very high added value for the Bordeaux wine. But Bordeaux is not restricted to the grapevine culture and the winemaking. It's also a nice place to visit with several hotspots. So you can do surfing, you can climb on the top of the highest sand dune in Europe, and you can also have a look on the very nice prehistoric painting in the Lascaux cave. You can also visit very lovely small villages that are in the list of the UNESCO World Heritage. One of the hotspots that I would like to introduce you is the University of Bordeaux. It's one of the first 3 universities of excellence in France, with the 56th rank for agroscience in the Shanghai ranking. It's a large university with 56,000 students. Among them, you have 2,000 of PhD students and 7,000 of international students. It's a large university with 4 different sites, campus sites, and 14 regional sites. We have a large campus also in terms of area with 187 hectares, among which we have 140 hectares of green areas. We have a large budget, and it's the first university in France for patent filing. So innovation is an important aspect for the University of Bordeaux. The University of Bordeaux is a multidisciplinary university with 8 different colleges. among which you have one which is devoted to vine and wine science, in which the students can be trained to become enologues or to do research on viticulture or on wine science. Now, I would like to introduce the main subject of my talk, and I would like to start by the grapevine origin and domestication. So you can make wine by using two types of grapevine. The wild grapevine, Vitis vinifera, the subspecies sylvestris, and the domesticated grapevine, the Vitis vinifera, the subspecies vinifera. The domesticated grapevine derived from the wild grapevine by a domestication process, which occurred 6,000 or 7,000 years ago. This domestication was associated to a phenotypic change. For example, the size of the leaf is increased in the domesticated grapevine. The reproductive habit is also changed. The wild grapevine is dioecious, so the cross-pollination is necessary, whereas the domesticated grapevine is hermaphrodite and the self-pollination is possible. The size of the bunch is also increased and the size of the berry as well. And the shape and the size of the pips are also modified, which is important, and I will show you later why. Another aspect which is very important for winemaking is the sugar content, which is also increased in the domesticated grapevine. The domestication process was followed by a diversification process, and at last, 6,000 cultivars are actually existing for the domesticated grapevine. The domesticated grapevine is worldwide distributed, but if you look at the map, most of the vineyards are concentrated in Europe. How we can explain this situation? This situation can be partially explained by the hypothesis of Deblay in 1983. Deblay suggested that the domestication of grapevine occurred in the Caucasian region between the Caspian Sea here and the Black Sea here. And then the domesticated grapevine, following the ways of commercial exchange, was spread in the different countries of Europe and in the north of Africa. This hypothesis was partially confirmed by Pipia et al. In 2012, using DNA sequence to follow the process of domestication during the transfer of the grapevine from Caucasian region to Greece. And it was also confirmed by Boubi et al. And Morica et al. In 2021, who used the shape and the size of the pips to follow the way by which the domesticated grapevine was shared in Europe between the 9th and the 6th century before Christ. However, grapevine culture doesn't mean winemaking. Some hypotheses suggest that the first fermented products from fruit were discovered in China. And maybe this fermentation process was exported from the China country to other country during the Neolithic period. Whatever the reality of this hypothesis, what was demonstrated is that the first winemaking from a grapevine was done in the Caucasian region, where the grapevine was domesticated. The demonstration was done by McGovern et al. In 2017. They analyzed by spectrometry, mass spectrometry, the residues in old potteries, and they found some organic acid. Among them, one is specific to winemaking, the tartaric acid. The second argument is the fact that they found in the same region the oldest cellar for winemaking. And this demonstrates that it was a steady production of wine 6,000 years ago. What about the introduction of winemaking and grapevine culture in France? So here you have a map with archaeological sites that are related to winemaking and grapevine culture. And as you can see, most of these sites are close to the Mediterranean Sea. So we have several arguments that indicate that grapevine culture and winemaking were introduced in Massalia, actually in Marseille, by Greek settlers around the 6th century before Christ. But this grapevine culture and winemaking was restricted to this area, to the south of France. And we have argument for that. Some archaeological material were found in Lançon and Latara, indicating that it was a local winemaking. And there are also arguments that the part of this wine was exported in the north of Italy by Etruscan merchants. But the development of the vineyard in France was the result of the invasion of the south of France and after the rest of the French territory by the Roman soldier. And between the 1st century before Christ and the 4th century after Christ, it was a great development of the vineyard, taking advantage of the rivers. First, the Rhone River to the Burgundy region, and after, in the west of France, in the region of Bordeaux, in the center of France, and also in Paris. What about Bordeaux? So Bordeaux became a grapevine growing region and a winemaking region during the Roman period. During the 1st century before Christ, Cato the Younger, a Roman writer, indicated that Bordeaux was used as a seaport to export the wine produced in the region of Gaillac, taking advantage of the Garonne River for the transportation to export the wine to Brittany for the Roman soldiers. But less than 1 century later, Pliny the Older, in his writing, indicated that Bordeaux was already producing wine, and this production was maintained till the fall of Rome and the barbarian invasions during the 4th and the 5th century. What was the winemaking process in Aquitaine region during the Roman period? By combining archaeological material found in Aquitaine region and the writings of Columella, a Roman writer, it was possible to determine this winemaking process. So first, the harvested grape were crushed on a rammer, and then the grape juice from this rammer was put in a basin by using a pipe, and close to the basin, it was an oven to evaporate the water content of the grape juice to increase the sugar content, and then after fermentation, the ethanol content of the wine. So after the grape juice was introduced in these big barrels. The winemaking process in Aquitaine region was different to the winemaking process down in southeast of France, and the cultivar which was used in Aquitaine region, the biturige cultivar, was different to the cultivars used in southeast of France. So already at the Roman period, it was a notion of terroir, so a specific agro-food product in a specific environment. We don't have so much information regarding Bordeaux wine production between the Roman period and the beginning of the Middle Age. We just know that the first golden age for Bordeaux wine started around the 12th century with the wedding of the Duchess of Aquitaine with the King of England, and then Aquitaine region became an English territory. It was a specific demand of the King of England for the Bordeaux wine producer to provide the equivalent of 100 million of bottles of wine to England. This wine was named Claret. It was a blended wine, but this one was a bad quality, impossible to store because the oxidation of this one was very high. But the Bordeaux wine merchants were able to sell this wine to England because they were allowed by the King of England, due to the wine policy, to sell their wine as the first on the market. So for the Bordeaux wine merchant, it was an advantage, but it was a disadvantage for the other wine makers in the other regions of Aquitaine and of France. So the Bordeaux wine merchant became very rich. After this first golden age for the Bordeaux wine, it was a period of instability during which the Aquitaine region came back to the French kingdom. At this period, the Bordeaux wine merchant developed new commercial exchange with merchants from Dutchland. And this Dutchland merchant introduced the way to dry part of the Aquitaine region, which was very humid, particularly the Médoc territory. And this was a way to extend the vineyard of Bordeaux. The second revolution was the use of smaller barrels and the use of bottles. This was a way to get a better quality of wine, and also to improve the storage of the wine, and then to develop new commercial exchange with countries that were far from Bordeaux, like Americas. The third revolution was the indication on the bottles of a label that the wine was coming from the Bordeaux vineyard, Vignoble de Bordeaux. And since you had aristocrats that they were at this period producing also wine, they labeled the bottle with the name of their chateau. So it's why this label of chateau was started for Bordeaux wine. At the end, around the middle of the 19th century, Napoleon III introduced a ranking for the best chateau. And this was a way to push the chateau to improve the quality of the wine. Unfortunately, several crises occurred after this second golden age, from the middle of the 19th century till the beginning of the 21st century. These crises were associated to different contexts. The first one was a pathological context with the occurrence of two major diseases at the middle of the 19th century. The downy mildew due to a fungus and the phylloxera due to an insect. These two major diseases destroy the majority of the French vineyard. The solution were found through the development of what we call the Bordeaux mixture. It was a mixture between with copper sulfate and white wash lime, not eco-friendly treatment. The other solution for the phylloxera was grafting, which was a revolution at this time. The grafting of the cultivar on rootstock corresponding to grapevine relative species found in US by Viala. The second context was an economical context. The first was due to imitation label. Since the Bordeaux wine were famous and expensive, wine producer in other regions decided to put the same label on the bottle, Bordeaux vineyard. So it was a decrease of the incomes for the Bordeaux wine producer, and they decided, together with the French government at the beginning of the 20th century, to create the Institut National des Appellations d'Origine, who was in charge to produce the Appellation d'Origine Contrôlée, AOC, protected designation of origin in English. The second situation was corresponded to the lake of wine. In the beginning of the 21st century, it was an overproduction of wine at the same time as the decrease of the consumption. So this excess of wine induced a decrease of the price and also of the quality. Several solutions were found, but in Bordeaux, it was the Bordeaux program which was chosen. And this program corresponded to the uprooting of 14% of the Bordeaux vineyard, and it was difficult to apply. The third context corresponds to a sociological context due to globalization, and this globalization results in the increase of the standardization of wine. So to solve this problem, it was necessary to push the terroirization of the wine, to push the uniqueness of a wine produced in a specific terroir, and also to push the destandardization of the winemaking and of the expert who evaluate the quality of wine. Because if you have experts that use the same parameters to evaluate the wine, they will push the standardization of wine. The last was the mysticization, the snobism associated to the wine consumption, which was responsible to the venue of mass market visitors, and also to the increase of investment by Chinese billionaires or Russian oligarchs that were not interested by the winemaking. They were just interested to have a chateau. So to solve this problem, a solution was to increase the quality of the œnotourism, and also to have a democratization of wine education, to push the people to learn about how wine is made, and to push the people to choose the wine of high quality. Now we are facing new crises that will challenge the sustainability of Bordeaux viticulture. The crisis due to climate change, and we have exceptional climatic events and global warming that will affect productivity and wine quality. But we have also a crisis due to ecological constraints. The reduction of pesticide use due to European Union policies and national policies. And the demand for organic wine production, what we call the bio, which could affect also the productivity, but maybe will have a good effect on wine quality. First, I would like to show you how the global warming can affect the productivity of the grapevine. Here you have the time course of grapevine bud development during 1 year. So the bud formation starts in May, June, and July. End of July, beginning of August till the beginning of September. Inside the bud, you have the formation of the flower, what we call flower induction. Then, during the autumn and the winter, the bud enter into dormancy and the development stop. It stops till the beginning of spring with the bud break and the growth of leaves and then flower and then the bunch after fertilization. If you have an increase of the temperature due to the climate change, the bud break will occur earlier during the winter in February. But you still have late freezing temperatures. This late freezing temperature will kill the leaves and the flower and then stop the production of bunch and, of course, of wine. It was the situation the last 2 years in the Bordeaux vineyard and in the vineyard in the rest of France. And here you can see the effect of this late freezing temperature. Now I would like to show you how the climate change can affect the quality of wine. So 2 of my colleagues from ESVV produced a predictive model regarding the harvest date for grapevine. And they have shown that this harvest date will be earlier than the actual harvest date in the near future and by the end of the century. This early harvest date will affect the ripening of the berry and the quality of the berry. And another of my colleagues proposed a predictive model concerning the acidity, the sugar content, and the phenolic compounds of the berry if we have an increase of the temperature. To see how it will affect the quality of wine, we have to look on the winemaking process. So in the winemaking process, you have alcohol fermentation from the sugar. And if you have an increase of sugar, the fermentation will increase the level of the concentration of alcohol. And if you reach a too high alcohol content, the fermentation will stop and will affect the quality of the wine. The second aspect, it concerns the acidity. The acidity is due to malic acid. And during the malolactic fermentation process, you have a conversion of malic acid in lactic acid. If you have less malic acid, you will have less lactic acid, and this will also affect the quality of wine. And finally, if you have a decrease of phenolic compounds, these phenolic compounds are important as antioxidant for the wine, for the storage of the wine, and for the quality of the wine aging. Now, I would like to discuss about the impact of the ecological constraint on grapevine productivity. So it's interesting to know that the grapevine production use 50% of the pesticides that are used by agriculture in France. This is due to the number of pathogens that infect the grapevine with fungi, bacteria, virus, mites, insect. So you have to use fungicide, bactericide, insecticide, acaricides to fight against all these pathogens. But as we have now new European Union policies and national policies to reduce the pesticide, this will impact the productivity of grapevine. Is the organic wine production a solution? We'll try to show you that maybe not. So organic wine production doesn't mean no treatment. Here you have the comparison between conventional wine production and organic wine production in terms of number of treatment and type of treatment. And as you can see, there are more treatments for the organic than for the conventional. And the pesticides that are used for the organic are not really eco-friendly. There is also an impact on the yield if we compare the organic with the conventional, and we have nearly 20% of reduction of the yield with the organic compared to the conventional. And of course, we have an increase of the food cost per barrel if we use the organic wine production compared to the conventional wine. But at the same time, there is a societal demand for organic wine production, and the conversion of vineyard during the last year was increased. Why? Because organic is considered as more healthy, and the customer are ready to pay more for an organic wine. What about the quality? So I can tell you a funny story. Two of my colleagues decided to organize a blind test for a panel of people using conventional and organic wine. At the end, the panel decided that conventional wine were better than the organic wine. They did the same wine testing with a panel which was informed that it was conventional and organic. And the panel decided that the organic wine were better than the conventional. So the quality of wine seems to be also defined by the label put on the bottle. Some solution can be found by the innovation of the growing practices and the winemaking. For example, the biosolutions. So biosolutions correspond to biocontrol agents against biotic stress, or biostimulants against abiotic stress. The problem with this biosolution is that it's a sort of jungle situation, because you have a huge diversity of different compounds or agents, but some of these biosolutions have limited efficacy due to cultivar or terroir diversity, environment diversity. So the problem is the acceptability of this biosolution by the producers. To push this biosolution in New Aquitaine, the New Aquitaine government decided to increase the budget for implementing this biosolution to replace the pesticide use and to reach 60% of the use of this biosolution, and also to become the first European region for the development of the biosolutions. The other innovation concerns smart viticulture. So the combination of digital viticulture, the use of remote sensing detectors, and artificial intelligence, so machine learning for data processing and modeling. It's the same situation as for the biosolution. It's a jungle situation in which you have many different tools with limited efficacy. Due to the same situation, you have a large diversity of cultivars and environments. So some of these different solutions are not well adapted to this diversity. So it's the same situation. We have a problem of acceptability by the producers. At the end, we have also limited efficacy if we have unpredictable climate events, because in this case, this innovation are not well adapted to this unpredictable situation. Some predictive models, for example, the one of Morales Castilla, propose some other solution. If we have an increase of the temperature, for example, to look for other wine growing regions, and for example, in the north of Europe, to look also for resistant cultivar for drought stress, heat stress, or some disease. But what about the Bordeaux wine, the AOC or PDO Bordeaux wine? If the Bordeaux wine will disappear in the next future, if we have an increase of the temperatures. In my lab, we are also trying to find the solutions. And I would like to show you two examples of the research project we are developing. The first research project concerns the isolation of heat wave tolerant mutants. Well, we know that high ambient temperature affect the male reproductive organ development and can result on a decrease of fruit yield due to a poor fertilization. So in our lab, we have developed a collection of mutants. And what we have done is to submit this collection of mutants to a heat wave and then to select mutants that are able to produce fruit after this heat wave. And we found several mutants that perform better than the wild type. And now we are characterizing the genes that are associated to this tolerance. The second research project concerns the analysis and the characterization of the biostimulatory effect of a compound named lifamine. This lifamine compound is produced by a company which is partner of our research project. This company is named BCF for Bretagne Chimie Fine. And the lifamine compound is a mix of 17 natural free amino acids extracted by BCF from poultry feather. With one of our students, Loé Malguia, we have shown that if we treat the plant with this biostimulant, we can alleviate the effect of heat stress by reducing the loss of fruit due to the heat stress, by reducing also the abortion of flowers due to this heat stress. Now, I would like to thank you for your attention. I would like also to thank all my colleagues of the Institute for Wine and Vine Science and my colleagues from the Joint Research Unit for Food Biology and Pathology who helped me for this presentation. I hope that I convince you that Bordeaux is a good place to visit and a very nice city. And I hope to see you on the next future in Bordeaux. So thank you again and bye-bye.